Hi guys, how are you? Welcome back to my garden. It is, I don't know, is it late autumn or is it early winter? I can see my own breath talking, so I say it is early winter. So, on this early winter day, I actually want to take you with me on a quick garden project that I want to do, which is preparing my roses for winter to come. I don't grow a lot of roses, but still, those couple of roses that I grow, I can prepare them. Some of them I can really cut back already. Others, I'm just going to give a light trim, mulch them in well. But what I want to do is just like talk you through all the varieties to show you what I have, how I treat them, how I prepare them, and maybe there's even something inspiring and interesting for you because I introduced three new varieties to the garden this year, and there are one or two which I really enjoy, and maybe I could inspire you of introducing them to your own garden. So hope you are excited about today's video. The first rose I want to talk about is Rosa rugosa, and that is actually a native to our area here. And I grow it in big clumps throughout the garden, but two really beautiful clumps just sitting next to our terrace, flanking the staircase that are leading up to the terrace. And I just want to give you a close look at them because you already got to see those beautiful red berries that are topping those roses. And you can tell if I just get a little closer that clearly birds are feeding on them, so they're really a perfect source of food for wildlife. But what I always do around this time of the year now, I come in with my secateurs and I cut them back hard because they grow extremely tall and they're very, very sturdy. So I just want to give you a quick look. You can tell all these light stems are all the growth from this year, and if I just go down, you get to see at one point the darker stems. So actually here, this is where I cut them back last year. So pretty much two-third I'm gonna trim back this year. This is also where I cut it back. So you can tell they're really loving their life here. So what I'm gonna do now is go in front of a camera and show you what I'm doing with these roses. So as I said, Rosa rugosa is a native to this area, and that is definitely one of the reasons on why I personally love growing it in my own garden. But what I want to do first is just talk you through a little bit about this rose, and maybe I can encourage you of growing this variety in your own garden as well. So these actually came from cuttings. They grow in the wildlife here, in between an area of the forest and the beach. There is an area of like dunes with some path. You could just walk through their grassland, and there are big patches of these roses, mainly in the pink tone, which I think is like the predominant color that you see out there in the wildlife. But there are a few patches of white ones, and I know where they are. So I took cuttings of those and propagated them in my garden, and they are loving it here. They're thriving extremely well, and they are very sturdy. Like in that area in the wildlife, they're growing pretty much on sand, on pure sandy soil. So here they have a good rich garden compost. So obviously they are growing to a full potential and size, and they are very, very sturdy. They propagate by runners in wildlife and also here in the garden, but those runners, they're not a thuck or anything. They're quite easy to pull. So if those runners grow into any direction where you don't want to have them, they don't have like long tap roots or general like a very well-developed root system, I would say. You could really just pull the runner up, come in with your secateurs, snip it off, and it takes a minute out of your life. So definitely nothing that should be a hindrance. These are completely easy, lovely kind of blossoms. There are no doubles or anything. They're completely open roses. So you get to see how full they are with pollen, and that attracts all the wildlife. So in summer, these roses are full of bees and bumblebees and anything that can possibly eat on them. So this is a reason why I really love on growing them as well. And obviously now this time of the year with the lovely fruit stands that they have, the birds fly in. So they're almost kind of like half a year interest for any kind of wildlife in your own garden. A lot of the roses, especially for me growing up like in the early 80s, I still grew up in an area where it was kind of like quite en vogue to have like a big flower bed only dedicated to roses in your garden. And I remember my parents growing really beautiful kind of like hybrid tea roses, but a lot of them were really, they always had like some sort of pesticide going on, a disease on the leaves or anything. And I remember my dad with this like big tank of like pesticide on his back and like spraying those roses at least 2, 3 times a year. And when I started off this garden, I was like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to use pesticide really, and I want to have it more organic and natural. And if you need to do things like this, then maybe it's just not my thing in the garden. But I started with like some other roses this year as well, which I'm going to show you in a while. But these roses, I can tell you, just from my experience, there is no pesticide blight at all on them. Nothing munges on them. The leaves are looking perfect. They come really early in the year. Lush green, really like a lovely fresh green color in the beginning, and then they just darken off the later the year is. And now you still get to see maybe a couple stems here. So when the temperatures are dropping, they change their color to a beautiful golden tone, which is just pretty. So there is a lot of almost like all year round interest about these roses. What I'm going to do now is get in with my secateurs and cut them back, but I'm not going to throw these on the compost now because there's still a lot of goodness in them and the birds will definitely love to feed on them. So what I do with these branches is go to the back of a garden and put them on top of my dead hedge so that they're sitting idle there like 1.5 meters above the ground, which is also kind of like safe for birds to feed on them, of course. And because some of the berries are still looking quite good, or rose hips, not berries, they're rose hips, are looking still quite good and firm. Others definitely not so good anymore. But I think the good ones I can just put on top of there and then the birds can come and feast on them, which makes me really happy. So what I'm going to do now is come in with my secateurs and then just really cut it back to the exact same level where I was. You can see this is the top and then I really go all the way back here. And I'm not counting like any like buds or eyes or however you call it, anything. So just really snip it off at a good length, and this is all I do. And when I cut it, and this is something you should always do with every kind of like hardwood you're cutting, always cut it on an angle, never cut it straight. Because when you cut it on an angle, rain can always kind of like drip off basically, but when you cut it straight, a single raindrop can sit on top of your stem and then it might start to rot and disease can come in. So this is absolutely one thing you should always do and remember when you're cutting any kind of hardwood. So yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Oh, and I can show you one more thing actually because I'm just holding it like this, and I mean roses, thorns, they kind of look very prickly. If I just come closer, you see how the stems are actually looking, but the single thorns are actually quite soft in a way. So wearing gloves, you can easily touch them. They're not even make it through the glove. So this is like another really nice reason on why you might want to consider these roses. So all I'm going to do now is really work my way through here and strip it all back and then continue with some other rose varieties that I'd love to show you. I cut back all of the rose rugosas and that was a fairly fast project, maybe like 20 minutes in total. And I'm happy that I did it. And I can tell you what made me happy as well is that I had the idea to put all of the branches with the rose hips on top of the dead hedge at the back of a slope because I could already see the first bird flying in and munging on one of those rose hips. So that was really lovely to see. What I want to do now is just flip the phone and talk you through all of the other roses that I'm growing in the garden and then make a stop at the last variety. Because number one, that is one of those that I really enjoy over the season. And there I just want to explain you how I treat the other kind of roses and how I prepare those for the winter season to come. First rose I want to talk about is called Acropolis. So I planted this year, and all the roses that I'm going to show you now I introduced to the garden early this year around May, I believe, and they all came in a pot or a container basically. So I was not planting any of these like bare root, just to be on the safe side. You get to see there's still a little bit of color in here, but I hope I remember to put all of the varieties that I show you today at the end of a video with a photo. So this kind of has this like kind of peachy pinkish tone, and you can tell it's still producing buds around this time of the year more fresh buds are appearing. I don't think that they will open though. But what I intend on doing is coming with my secateurs, cut them and take them indoors because I think they might open still in a vase. This variety has really nice foliage, as you can tell, very strong. Didn't spray anything, something munched here a little bit though, but in general, there's no brown spots or anything, so very happy about it. Definitely good. And what was lovely about the variety is it was perfect for cut flower arrangement because here you get to see just a little bit of it, but on a single stem there appeared clusters of flowers, and that is always beautiful for cut flower arranging. The only thing you might want to know is that here they don't produce any rose hips or anything really, so they kind of just like this is pretty much how they're looking and nothing really happens here. They kind of just brown off, but still very intriguing color. Also how it changes throughout the year. It starts kind of like peachy and then it really went more into a pinkish tone. The next variety I want to talk about is called Alden Beeson, and as you can tell, I put it at the back of a slope, so one on each side of the bench flanking it, and that rose was incredible throughout this entire season. You can see again, just talking about the foliage, that it is looking really nice. No damage or anything. You can also tell that there are tiny rose hips here and they start coloring up really beautifully. So nice in combination now still with the pink heather and the mum that is actually still in flower a little bit at least. So what a lovely combination. And it was flowering really throughout the entire year. It started kind of like in early June, I would say, and just stopped probably a month ago, I guess. And I really love to use it for cut flower arranging because it has, you can tell, it produces these really long stems actually. And on each stem at the end there is a cluster of so many small flowers, all completely open, no double. So they're great for wildlife again in a creamy rose color. So what I want to do next year is come in and take some fresh wood cuttings and try to propagate it myself because I absolutely love this rose. I really can recommend it to you. Next rose I want to talk about is growing at the slope as well. And I remember I was showing you in one of my previous videos, but since the day is about roses, I don't want to forget about it. So this is another rose rugosa. It's called Thérèse Bonnier. So it is a bred one and it has double flowers. They come in pink, but I mainly grow it for the winter interest that it has. So if I just show you one of the smaller ones here, I planted these as well this spring. They have an absolute glorious color in their stems. They really have this like dark crimson red color going on. And when the sun is out, you can really see that they are actually glowing in the sun. Super happy with them. They hardly have any thorns on them, which is also quite interesting, I think. And yeah, I'm not going to cut them or do anything with them. Just want to see and wait what they're doing next year. But they have a quite interesting growing habit as well, which I want to show you next year to come, of course. Last rose I want to talk about is called Novalis, and this is a very special rose in terms of color. Unfortunately, there are no buds or no flowers on this one anymore, but I have some beautiful photos of this one. And you can tell, oh, Alfie's coming. This is what you can tell, of course. And you can tell that this one starts already like coloring up in its autumn color. So the leaves already go from yellow into like a brownish tone. Some of them had a little bit of stress. But to be fair, these are the ones that were in the fullest sun of all of the roses. There's still some fresh growth on them though, so they're definitely like happy in this position. But what I want to do now is just flip the phone and talk you through a little bit on how I prepare my roses, especially on this rose here. I am standing in between the two big walnut trees on the island bed, and this is one area where I introduced a big clump of this new rose called Novalis earlier this year in May. As all of those new roses that I introduced to the garden, I bought them in a container as well because I wanted to be sure that they're well rooted in, and they were, and I was really happy with them. This is a variety, like a fairly new variety. I think it was bred in 2013 if I'm not wrong, by I think the most traditional German rose breeder there is called Cordis, and they advertise it as a fairy tale rose. So if you think about rose and fairy tale, it already is a good indicator on what kind of rose and color it is. So yes, this is a full-on double rose, but really beautiful. And double roses, they're not so good for wildlife because they're so full and full of petals that bees don't really have easy access to the pollen that is in there anymore, if there even is any pollen. But I have so many of the other really open roses that I was like, I need to treat myself with this variety. I just couldn't help it. And it comes in a very special color. It flowers in violet lilac, and it really does. I was so happy with the outcome because sometimes when you buy a rose and they advertise as like blue flowering, they're more like on the pinkish side. And there is a flush of pink in here as well, but it really feels more like a violet tone. And I was so happy with it, loving it. I took so many photos. I'm really going to put something by the end of a film. What I want to do now is just quickly talk you through what I'm going to do with all of these roses that I just showed you, because the rose rugosa in the beginning of the video are really cut and back hard, but these ones here I don't. Even though growing up, my parents would have come in here now just around this time of the year, cut back everything hard, and then they would just use the soil that is around it and just kind of like shovel up almost like a little mole pile around the base of the rose to protect the rose from the frost. And this is what they would have done. But then when the spring came, I remember a lot of those branches that were cut back hard, they were hit by frost and they died back. So this is why you should actually not really cut them back around this time of the year. Only thing you can do if you want to, and I might do a little bit here and there, just as a cleanup maybe, just snip off a little bit, just on an angle, but really don't get in there hard, because if frost comes and attacks it, what happens, it might just die back maybe like the first 10 centimeters, but not too deep, and then you can come in early next year and cut them back. So the rule of thumb is, this is like according to my research and how it made sense to me as well, is to cut them back around like March, April time of the year. And this is when I hope I say the word right now, forsythias are blooming, these yellow flowering shrubs. That word, honestly, when I started this video, I was like, oh God, I need to say that word. Now I already started panicking because we grow it here in the garden as well, but that is like really complicated for me to say for some reason. So yeah, this is all I'm going to do basically, because there's still even leaves on the roses, and when there's some leaves on something, you want to make sure that you don't cut it back, because all the goodness that comes from the leaves is still going to go into the roots and store it in there. So of course I don't really want to cut a lot of it back now. But what I'm going to do is just mulch it in well. So I have a bucket with mulch here, and just make sure that the entire root section is protected fairly well if any kind of like frost is coming. So this one do, just come in with some fresh mulch, get in here and just make sure that all the way around the base of the rose there is a good layer of protection going on. Because you really want to make sure that these are off for a good start next year, of course. But you can tell all the branches are looking nice, flexible. There's nothing died back, nothing browned off or anything. So this is really good. So yeah, this is actually what I'm going to do. Just go to all of the different areas where I grow these roses, maybe cut off a little bit, just like the tips, just here and there, mulch them in, and then I'm going to do one last thing, because I could just see it there on this side of the garden. I just looked over. There I have a couple of boxwood spheres, and I haven't trimmed them back at all this year. They are looking still quite all right. I'm not going to cut back a lot, but there's some funny branches poking out here and there, and I just want to refine the shape a little bit, because I know March comes and I'm going to cut back all of the perennials around it. They will be kind of like the backbone of the structure of the garden, and I don't want to look at something looking so funny as it is right now. So this is also what I'm going to do, even though it's not related to roses at all. You guys, that is it for today's video. As usual, I'm running out of time because the days are so short and I still need to tidy up everything in the garden because I've got my stuff flying around everywhere, literally. I hope you enjoyed today's video and it was kind of interesting for you. These are just like those things that I really need to do around this time of the year, and sometimes I feel like it's also interesting to share those small jobs that you can do in a winter garden or in a garden to prepare the winter. It doesn't take a lot of time out of your day, but your plants are very happy when you just like take care of those small things. So up until then, I would really love to welcome you, I and Alfie. Alfie as well. We both would love to welcome you very soon in our garden again. Until then, take care. Bye.